Hello, Theiss. I have a theory about the situation your adventuring protagonist is currently facing. The cards Bo's been dealt by her own poor sense of direction are not in her favor. I fear I'm becoming a mite bit worn down over the course of my journey. I'm not as young as I once was. You and I both know this. The travel is exciting. It's something I've been pondering for a long while. But catching planes, trains, and automobiles has been stressful. And the constant motion, while invigorating, is taking its toll. I think my next stop may be my last for a little while. That doesn't have to mean anything to you, I suppose, other than my mailing address being a bit more consistent for a little while. But, if you were looking to, that is to say, if you wanted it to, never mind. I'm going to get myself situated. I sat down to record as soon as it seemed like I couldn't be bothered by anyone else, and then let me tell you, it has taken quite a bit to get to. Always yours, me.
Episode 4. From passing whispers, voices stirred. Hello, Mera. I've taken to Brooklyn today. New York seemed like a good place to settle for a little while. I feel the same about the constant traveling. I've learned and experienced so much in the time I've spent abroad, but I'm becoming worn down the longer I spend out of my typical routine. We really aren't as young as we once were, eh? A couple of old cat ladies that made the decision to do something crazy and travel the world because they had always wanted to. One on irrational impulse and one on sad and heartachy irrational impulse. How silly we've been. You and I are lucky, lovey, that our work lets us function out of office. Though, when I get back, I think I'd like a few days where I can at least feel like I'm in a productive setting. Anyways, I'm in one of the great boroughs of good old New York for the same reason I've gone, well, everywhere else. Yiddish, spoken by only a minute fraction of the population here, yet absolutely rich with history and cultural influence over its popularity. It's religious in background, Yiddish. Religious Yiddish. It's a Jewish language. There was fear, ages ago, that Yiddish would become more popular than Hebrew. There was no need for that fear. Though the language was not unpopular, it was not as common as Hebrew was. However, the fear let the language fall out of more common practice. And, of course, with the Holocaust, millions of the speakers were killed. Which kills the language in a way that can't be competed with, not that it should be. Yiddish tapered off. It could still be found in places like here, though, where the Jewish population was diverse and large, big enough for people to speak whatever was brought to America, yet small enough that everyone could still communicate and coexist. Sorry, as I said, I'm a bit tired. By the 90s, methods had been introduced to bring Yiddish back into the population more than it already had been. People began seeing the value behind the language, both in how it left its mark culturally and religiously. A Yiddish language theater was created, Yiddish Spiel. Children show interest in speaking the language of their grandparents, who joyfully try and teach them. Do you remember my grandpa? He sent me an article a while ago. So kind of him to think of me, really. About the immersion program that schools near him had planned. French would be offered to the kids from kindergarten and first grade, so they could get a better grasp of English while beginning to learn a second language. Offering a language to kindergartners. When could be a better time to start learning? Could a program like this help languages like Yiddish? starting younger than schools already are to make the language something second nature as opposed to something decisively, forcibly learned. I remember learning Spanish in school, 2nd to 5th grade. Oh, how I disliked Spanish class. It felt as though the class made the day drag on until forever, and I can't say I've retained anything that I've learned, haha. But I'm glad that I started with something. Had I really been interested, I could have stuck with Spanish through middle and high school. Maybe I could consider myself fluent if the program had been mandatory. Would this sort of a system, continual teaching lasting from early education until a student went off to college or the workforce, be good for countries seeking to save their native language? Could it work on a lower level, such as the community area where a language is from? If the language is not as relevant to the country as a whole, what impact could this have? Especially with the religious aspect. I feel as though it's not a bad idea to implement some basic religious languages as options for children at a young age. I know that beyond Christianity, most religious institutions already do so, but I feel as though there's no harm in offering the languages as just that. Just the language for a broader array of people to learn from a young age, without the overarching religious aspects. While it isn't something that connects to me as deeply as it does others, I feel as though religion is important to a good group of people, and some aspects of it appeal to even non-religious folk like myself. A connection to one of the religious tongues, especially the less common ones like Yiddish, is something that could be appreciated by them, as well as by people of strong faith. Sorry for rambling. It's just so fascinating, you know? Anyways, languages are often spoken regionally. I mean, it makes sense that Spanish would be spoken in and around Spain. As the region is influenced by outside forces, the number of speakers that can subsequently continue to teach the language grows smaller. Places like Brooklyn were and have been affected by anti-Semitism for a long time. The Yiddish-speaking Jewish community hid away and distanced themselves from ties to their religion for their own safety. This allowed one of the few major areas that spoke the language to, well, stop speaking it, sort of in its entirety. Does the language matter as much to the people that speak it, as much as it once did? I mean, I don't necessarily know why it would. Don't get me wrong, I feel like it's important to try and learn about your own past if you can, to connect with and learn from it. And language is a big part of that. However, most people aren't as big fans of their language history as I am. So, would someone care about the language if they didn't speak it? I wonder if there was no religious influence and no subsequent anti-Semitic influence because of the region, would people still learn it? I feel as though without a religious aspect, people wouldn't learn Yiddish or Hebrew, unless it was spoken regionally, of course. The influence of trends, what causes things and words to become popular or fall out of fashion, is so vast and unpredictable. So much can change in a short time. Just 30 years ago, we were coming out of the 90s. Now here we are. Kids back on the rise of the internet would most definitely be confused by some of the lingo used today, because things change. Language is constantly evolving and growing with society. Now might be a good time for me to pause my talking for a bit. Here's today's piece instead. Okay, story time. So, I believe we left off with Bo searching for an inn to rest in. She managed to use the instructions of the shopkeep to the closest one, and paid for lodgings for a week. Or, at least tried to. Her coin was refused, being cited in the odd version of Odd Tongue as not currency recognized by the kingdom. Now, by this point, Bo was growing worried. A foreign language, common coin being denied, it seemed to her that Bo had slept the night away and woken up in some alternate reality. In a way, she had. The greater passage of time had allowed for much change to occur. You see, shortly after Bo began her slumber, the kingdom of Lapsai was conquered by their neighboring Florea. It was a brutal conquering. Villages were plundered and burned, families forever separated. Each citizen under the Florean rule was expected to follow the traditions and customs of the rapidly expanding kingdom. Language spoken was no exception. Any citizen caught teaching their children a language other than those mandated by the kingdom, or speaking it in a greater amount than Florean, even in the privacy of one's own home, would be jailed and punished. Some punishments ended at jail time, others were fined, and some, well, the punishment depended on the town's sheriff. Bo, of course, did not know this. As she began to attempt to navigate the streets once again, in search of a peddler with which she could procure money she could actually use, for room and board, she went over what she knew in her head. Okay, Bo, she thought, go over what's happened. You got lost. You went to sleep. You woke up, and the things around you had changed. The signpost you saw was, well, it must have been in Florean. The script was so sloppy, though. As she pieced together the facts, Bo felt more informed and more confused at the same time. She seemed to be the only one around her that was off-put by the oddity of the whole situation. So she walked, following the advice of more shopkeeps, and managed to stumble across a stall selling what was labeled as Hoffman's Historic Curiosities, Trinkets, and Paraphernalia. As Bo walked towards the stand, a head popped up from where the person behind the counter was rummaging. Oh, hello. Welcome to Hoffman's Historic Curiosities, Trinkets, and Paraphernalia. I'm Hoffman. What can I get for you? Hello, Hoffman. My name is Bortro. I have stumbled upon some coin that is not worth much around here. I had a fleeting thought that mayhaps I could peddle such currency for something of equal value to exchange in the market just outside your stall. Hoffman blinked once, then again, before a broad grin split across their face. Well, alrighty. Let me get a look-see at what you got. The younger woman nodded, pushing her coin purse from her larger knapsack. The closer the purse got to Hoffman as Bo moved to empty it on the counter, the wider Hoffman's smile grew. My, what have we here? These. Whereabouts did you stumble across these, fair patron? If you simply must know, they were gifted to me by my uncle, though perhaps it seems he was mistaken as to the currency used in the area. Hoffman laughed shortly at Bo's words. You're lucky on 3 accounts, then. First, I can get you a good deal on these because of their aged value. Bo frowned slightly at these words as the shopkeep continued. Second, no one else recognized just what kind of goods you got here. And third, and most importantly, I won't turn this over to the sheriff as evidence warranting you or your uncle's arrest. Bo blanched at these words. What? Warrant arrest? The smiling clerk laughed again as they next spoke. Now, Bortro, you and I both know that items with the potential to promote old nation loyalty are considered illegal. The king has really been cracking down on these sorts of things lately. The young woman only looked on aghast as they continued. You've come to the right place for relocating illegal wares, though. These'll fetch quite the price in the underground market. They're looking for this sort of thing in order to make replicas of the original coinage of the region. Say, do you know about when these are from? No, I'm afraid I don't. Underground market? Hoffman seemed to freeze for a moment, before looking more closely at Bo incredulously. You aren't from the Empire, are you? Empire? Why, No, Bo pauses for a moment, before realizing, this isn't the Lapsai Kingdom, is it? No, fair lady. No, it isn't. Hoffman, following their short conversation in their pop-up shop, as the two of them quickly moved to a shady-looking hole-in-the-wall tavern a few streets away and ordered drinks for the two. The tavern was actually located in a space accessible by a hole in a wall, covered by a sheet, but Bo was feeling too appreciative for both the chance to rest her feet and to rehydrate to do anything else aside from gratefully accept. All right, then. We should be good to go here? It's a place the local guard won't come in, so don't worry your pretty little head about getting in any trouble. Oh, okay then. She found herself pinned by their gaze. Now, Miss Bortro, please call me Bo. Pardon? It's polite to introduce yourself with your given name, but I happen to be much more adjusted to being referred to as Bo. Hoffman nodded. Okay, Ms. Bo. I know you and I only met a brief while ago, but despite being in the thick of the Empire, you didn't even know this region was a part of it. You show up at the market and try to use Old Kingdom currency, then seem surprised at the notion of punishment for even having such items. Even the way you speak, it's like you were taught the language by someone's prissy granny. I need to know, what is going on with you? Under the firm watch of the salesperson, somewhere Bo never expected herself to be along her journey, she explained what had happened to her over the past few days. Her home life and how she'd sought out adventure. Her fateful slumber, alone in the woods where everything seemed to start going wrong. As she talked, Hoffman nodded along to her story, seeming to process the information and store it away almost as quickly as it came. As Bo mentioned her rest in the clearing, their eyes widened, and once she finished talking, they seemed to stare at her for a moment before speaking up. Bo, what language was your first? Lepsian, I believe. It was supposed to be the language of my home nation, but I'm beginning to suspect that perhaps I was misinformed in my youth. As she says this, Bo's eyes fall on her drink. I'm not entirely certain you were misinformed. Bo looks up at Hoffman. Miss Bo, I think you were raised a child not of the Empire, because for you, the Empire didn't exist. I think, somewhere along your travels, they cut off and looked to the young woman hard in the eye. You've become a person out of time. Perhaps the last true citizen of the old ways, and the only person that could help us teach our young about what this kingdom should be. Bo took a sharp breath. All she could say was, oh. That seems quite dramatic enough for today, Mera dear. I'm getting quite excited to see where the story goes from here. The notes on what I have planned are going to lead to something great. I think, for sure, next time is going to be my last stop for a little while. I could do with some time on break, methinks. Well, this whole journey has been amazing. It's also been rather stressful. We both have been fortunate enough to work from home. Well, our homes away from home while on this journey. But I think some vacation time before I pick this up again would do me some good. I hope to hear from you soon, lovey. Love, me. Around the World, From Me to You, is brought to you as my personal project. The voice of Theiss is, well, me. The voice of Mera is Caroline Kondak. Music is Days Like These by Lakey Inspired, and Space Jazz Cafe by The Loyalist. If you have interest in dying languages, I encourage you to look into them. There is a lot of history there, and it can be quite interesting to learn about. Keep it up.